This is HBR News number 426. Trevor Bauer has the receipts. Drunk dental assistant Gropes boy, where we discuss the news of the week and give it the Badger treatment. Woo! Hello everyone and welcome to Honey Badger Radio. I hope you guys are doing well this week and that you're laughing at all of this absurdity so that you're not consumed by it. My name is Brian. I'm joined by, as always, my co-hosts, Mike Jade, Hannah, and Dr. Ranmercam. We have a great show lineup for you guys today, so please be sure to continue the conversations both in the chat as well as the comment section. On this week's HBR News, we're going to be talking about, well, what could be World War III, a little bit, and what that means for men, or potentially. The former Major League Baseball pitcher Trevor Bauer, who was accused of sexual assault, and the twist that came after. ACAB activist Ryan Carson is murdered, and more, so stick around, it's going to be a good time. And be sure to join us afterwards for the patron-only show. So, since we're on the topic of Israel-Palestine stuff, one, you might know her from somewhere. Mia Khalifa is a model and actress. I'm just gonna say it that way. Former actress.
Professional attention whore.
Yeah.
There you go.
Apparently, she has been. She has lost her job over disgusting Israel-Palestine comments, and she is she is now an influencer. That's it. Former porn star and influencer will no longer have her own channel on Playboy's OnlyFans-like centerfold platform. So
I mean, she'll never lose her job. I mean, what does an influencer do when they lose their job? They default to porn, don't they?
Well, but she's doing it backwards because she started in porn, and then she became.
And then she had this big thing where like it was demeaning and it was horrifying and it was the worst thing she ever did in her life. And then she basically went back to softcore.
Yeah. Well, Playboy. Yeah, exactly. That's like the. I don't know, like that's like the Bill and Jane of porn or something. But so anyway, apparently she done did the wrong thing, and I'm gonna read through the article, and we'll do this in the patron show. So if you would like to join us in the patron show, you have to become a Badger yourself by going to feedthebadger.com and giving us a basically join the group. You do that by going to feedthebadger.com and starting a monthly subscription. $5 a month will give you a access to all of the additional content and our Discord server where you'll be able to hang out with the Badgers. Any of you guys can go into Discord server now for free. Just go to badgernation.online. But the membership will give you exclusive access to additional rooms and chats and stuff and shows, etc., as well as the patron show. And if you give it higher levels, then you can even be a part of the conversation. So please consider, it really helps us out, going to Feed the Badger and starting a monthly subscription. And if you don't want to wake up in the morning to find that we have been yeeted from the internet, or at least the internet that most people use, then go to badgerfeed.com. That's badgerfeed.com, or go to feedthebadger.com, or I'm sorry, honeybadgerradio.com. I get these all. Allison made too many websites. I don't know why.
Are you looking
she
for the
made
blog?
so many websites. No, honeybadgerradio.com is where you get the archive content. Honeybadgerbrigade.com is the website. Feed the Badger. You see what I'm saying? Allison, get your shit together. Can we just put it all in one place? Can we just do that? I'm sorry. Also, shout out to the Rumble gang. Join us on Rumble and support Rumble Chan over there, where we have custom emotes, and Rumble is a very good platform that I strongly support. And so I hope that I will see you guys there. Okay, with all of that out of the way, let's get into today's stories. So we're going to start with, it's not really a story, but I want to talk a little bit about recent news regarding the Israel-Palestine conflict. Not really sure if it's just Israel-Hamas. I know it's been framed different ways. Doesn't matter. I'm not talking about the specifics of this incident. What I'm talking about is that it's stuff like this that I think is worth mentioning, and this is one of the reasons why Honey Badger Radio exists, because you will not find on any media anywhere a discussion about what a war means for men. And not just the men that are engaged in conflict, like in the Ukraine-Russia thing. There are Russian soldiers and civilians, and there are Ukrainian soldiers and civilians that, you know, didn't ask for this. They're doing this because they have to, or they're propagandized into thinking that they're supposed to, or whatever, but they are throwing themselves into a meat grinder over something that could be resolved in a lot of other ways. And I think the same thing is happening here. So I wanted to bring this up because one of the primary arguments or arguments that feminists make, and this discussion has been going on for very recently a lot, especially Pearl has been talking about it to some degree. She sort of talks around it when she talks about the vote, is that the vote has historically been conditional for men. It is on the condition that they register for selective service. And when you bring this up with feminists, they dismiss it and say, we haven't had a draft since, you know, Vietnam or World War II or whatever it is. So for like basically 50 plus years, why like that basically means that this whole thing is meaningless, even though men still have to sign up. And we've talked about the penalties for not doing it. It's not just that it's against the law, but you can't vote if you haven't done it, and you could be fined, and that can get into much worse things. But now,
since we're going to get corrected on that, I'm going to point out that because it is considered a felony, he's right. If you get convicted of a felony in many states, you cannot vote.
Yeah.
And that's the connection, because they don't stop you at the polls because you don't have a draft card, but they will not let you vote if you are, in many states, if you are a convicted felon.
Yes. So, this is not something that we can simply dismiss out of hand, because it does affect men. And this is something that women don't have to do. I even tweeted about it, or X'd about it, or posted, I don't know what you call it, but I said, oh, it looks like they're, you know, I'm hearing, because I have some friends in my Facebook circles that live in Israel. Skeptor is one of them. You guys remember Skeptor from back in the day?
Yeah.
And
I miss that guy.
I've heard them say that they have seen talk on Western media around, or sort of like, you know, hinting at bringing back a draft. So they're, you know, this is like, for whatever reason, this is bigger than Ukraine, Russia for the United States. And so, at least for the United States, but it might not only be for the United States, because some of the British people that I follow have concerns that they also may be instituting a draft. So what is this? What are the odds of this happening? So the Mises.org, which is it's a libertarian caucus, right? They wrote a piece on it 2 weeks ago. So very recent. But it wasn't about, obviously it wasn't about Israel-Palestine. It was about Ukraine-Russia. But they were talking about the same thing, because this was something that could still happen with Ukraine-Russia as well, but, you know, was definitely floated. And it definitely did happen. If you lived in the Ukraine and you were a man, you had to fight. And if you lived in Russia and you were a man, you also had to fight, right? Within like whatever the other qualifying age range is. So this is what they wrote. The essay in the U.S. Army War College's academic journal discussed the lessons the U.S. military should learn from the ongoing war in Ukraine. A concerning section suggests that large-scale combat operations may require a move towards partial conscription due to the potential need for a significant number of troops. The context mentions that in a major conflict, the U.S. could face a daily rate of 3,600 casualties and require 800 replacements. It also highlights the military's recruiting shortfall and a decline in the individual ready reserve. Remember, when we're talking about replacements and conscription, we're talking about men. We're not talking about women. We're talking about men. The essay challenges the previous notion of hybrid warfare and suggests the industrial wars of attrition may require substantial manpower. It notes Ukraine's use of conscripts and the high attrition rates that they face. The prospect of reintroducing conscription raises concerns, especially considered past U.S. involvement in costly and seemingly futile wars. The essay implies that the main adversary requiring conscription could be Russia. The essay argues that the U.S. lacks a compelling national interest that would necessitate involvement in an industrial war of attrition in Eastern Europe. It suggests that entangling alliances and misguided ideologues could lead to such involvements. The author proposes abolishing the standing army as a solution to the military recruitment crisis. And that's Ukraine, but Israel is, I think that it is one of those things that, unlike Ukraine, where there are people who are like, you know, kind of divided on it, there are more people, I'm not one of them, but there are more people that are like, we have to side with Israel. So the U.S. has to throw, basically, there's this very good chance they're going to throw lots of money at them, which is, taxpayer money, and they're going to throw troops at them. And they may resort to conscription. If they wouldn't do it with Russia, Ukraine, there's a better chance they'll do it with this. And I think that's what is my primary concern. Plus, there is what you're seeing online. So there is a lot of propaganda. And I'm not concerned about what is the propaganda, what's not the propaganda, who's doing it, who's not doing it, because that's getting into a sides thing, and I'm not interested in the sides. I'm interested in like what is being used, and what they're using is female victimhood. It's the most effective tool. I have watched a bunch of conservative pundits that have talked about like how much they want to essentially wipe out Hamas, or they're all about the war effort, etc., protecting Israel, and all of them show clips of women being like dragged out and assaulted and kidnapped. And look, that's bad. I'm not okay with any of that. But I'm making sure you know that that's the emotional manipulation that works. If they did that to men, we probably would shrug, or at least say, well, that's the cause of war. But it's women. And it's not just women, it's civilian women specifically. So anyway, that's what I wanted to mention, that because I know everybody's talking about this thing. And I think that the angle I'd like to approach it from is the conscription angle, because this is the thing, again, feminists say, it's not really a men's issue because we're not going to conscript men, and I have a feeling that we might. So anyway, I hope we don't, but
I just have a question. I just have a couple of questions for people on this. Do you not remember at the beginning of Desert Storm, before they started, and they didn't do conscription per se for Desert Storm, but they did start recalling people that had been in the military. There's a sort of a pre-draft draft that happens there. And one of the big pieces of propaganda for that was that the terrorists had gone into Kosovo, into the hospitals, and taken the incubators for preemie babies out of the hospitals and dumped the babies out of them and stolen them. Mm-hmm. And there was a big to-do about that. And that was one of the things that was used to persuade people that we had to go to war and American men had to enlist and so on. And a lot of people enlisted because of that. And then, if I remember right, the story turned out to not be true.
That was the Naira al-Shaba testimony, I do believe.
Yeah.
15-year-old girl that went to Congress.
Right. And if I remember right, we later learned that either didn't happen, or they stole incubators, but there were no babies in them. And so we were lied to. And I kind of wonder if people are remembering that, because this sort of feels the same. Is there...
No, actually, 33 years ago to this very date was that testimony. October 10th, 1990.
Highly emotional testimony used to eclipse the fact that we didn't actually have a dog in that fight. And it is outrageous. That kind of thing is outrageous. Although the other question I have is, are all the people that are outraged about that pro-life? Do they vote against politicians that promise to expand abortion? Because if you're not okay with killing babies when they're babies, and you're okay with basically beheading them in the womb, then I think you're a little hypocritical. And it becomes a question of, you want to send men to war against their will for this, based on that hypocrisy, then it's a major issue. The hypocrisy is a major issue. That's it. That's my two questions. You know, like they're using this kind of propaganda. Do people not remember how it was used before and turned out to be a lie? And are you equally outraged when it's the issue of abortion? Because if you're not, I don't want to hear it.
Mike? Yeah, I know Ryan McCann was going to say something, I think.
Yeah, actually, we're all jockeying for first position because we've all got shit to say about this. I mean, can you imagine what has been done to men in Israel? You're probably left to imagine it because we're not seeing any videos of it. A lot of the outrage that's been spewed around now is based on the videos that we've seen, and this always happens with these sudden violent events. Like, it's all based on the video that we see, and we assume that the video we're seeing is an accurate representation without any lies by omission. And yeah, and this is how warfare works. The propaganda involves what is everyone doing to the women. The reality on the ground is what's happening to all the men, which obviously makes a lot of people skeptical about the video footage they're even seeing in this age where all sorts of things can be deep faked. You have to wonder how much of it is real, how much of it isn't, and how much of it is even real than what we're seeing, and we're not even seeing it. So, like in so many warfares, this could be thousands of men getting killed and ignored, while the media points its cameras at the very few women and children who are being killed. And all of this is going to be used to justify, as you said, even more men getting thrown into the meat grinder to die for the notion of women getting victimized in any possible way. And yeah, I don't want to do any both sides thing. I don't want to even do any fucking nihilistic who cares who dies thing. I'm skeptical of everything because it's still the early days. And you can say, well, we're seeing video footage. The camera never lies. The camera does lie. The camera does lie at this point. The technology exists for the camera to lie, let alone the technology exists for media companies to ignore that which the cameras tell them, but they don't want to exist, while pushing to the front everything the camera tells them that they do want to. Even if the camera never lies, you can still select the footage that you want people to see. So, yeah, yes, there are almost certainly atrocities going on right in that part of the world, but you can't even rely on the video evidence because you don't know what's being omitted from either side. By the way, I have to keep saying that.
It's a really good point, though. You can't trust video these days.
Yeah. But again, that's why I'm not necessarily discussing the validity of anything, but you can discuss the content that's put out, whether it's real or not. And what is the most effective is seeing women in peril. That is what is that's the best propaganda. Like, it's always been. You know, like, I made a post and I said, you know, like, if you want to start a war, show video of women and children being victimized, but especially women. And, you know, you will motivate people. You'll enrage them. They'll lose their faculties. They'll do what you want. And it doesn't matter who does it. The fact is the weapon is there because of how simpy our society is. So, but, and, you know, this... If it turns out that there is a draft, I hope that the men, and I hope you guys really think about, like, if you're thinking about serving, I hope you know what you're fighting for, because you are putting yourself at risk for that probably didn't have to happen. Like, honestly, like, this wouldn't have happened if Trump was president. I'm just saying it's true. It wouldn't have happened if Trump was president, period.
That is true.
And I mean, it didn't, like, Ukraine, Russia wouldn't have happened if Trump was president. He had all that shit on lockdown, no wars for 4 years, and then he leaves and shit goes crazy. And you know, it's insane. In fact, I think I think Hamas has some of the weapons, or at least the weapons that, we left behind when Biden pulled out, which is like, why they're able to do this. But who knows what else is going on? I'm not pretending to know. My point is that we are now in this situation, and it's going. If we're going to be going to war, the world has to acknowledge that it's men doing this. It's men doing this, not women. And I don't know if women are going to acknowledge this reality, but they have to be forced to look at this, because this is what they voted for. They voted for this, and that's what we're getting. So there you go. At least Drumpf's not in office, right? At least Dotard Drumpf isn't in here creating world peace. But anyway,
it should be pointed out. It's not that if Trump were in charge, this wouldn't be happening. If the Uniparty wasn't in charge, this would be happening. It's just that Trump is the only representative who's beyond the Uniparty.
When Trump was in office, he had brokered a peace deal. So this was not, this was not as bad as it is now. Like, everything that has happened in terms of conflicts since he left office is things that he had, like Brian said, on lockdown, things that he had shut down, or things that he had been working with to if not broker peace, at least create an uneasy peace,
some stability,
of,
basically,
negotiation, and some stability in terms of negotiation, and in terms of knowing what the United States would or would not do, and so on. He did have that on lockdown. It wasn't just not the Uniparty. It was specifically Mr. Negotiation, Mr. Professional Negotiator. Mm-hmm. Like, that's what his job was before he was president, was negotiating deals. And so, you had somebody in the White House that was good at that.
Yeah.
And now we don't. Now we have somebody at the White House that is not and has never been good at anything.
Yep.
Except for fucking up. And fucking our country up.
Yep.
And he has fucked men his whole career. He has spent his whole career fucking men over. And I don't know why anybody would expect it to be different now. Mm-hmm. But there are people that seem to. And by the way, no, this is not evidence that gynocentrism is natural and inevitable. Evidence that gynocentrism happens is not evidence that it is natural and inevitable. It is evidence that it is a social attitude that exists in the world. I don't know why people keep confusing that either.
Mm-hmm. So, if there's no other thoughts...
Well, it's because...
Go ahead, Mike.
I've got one, which is very, very brief. If there was ever a time, ever, to be absolutely skeptical of everything you see coming out of the media, this is it. Think of the last decade or so as training. This is the final test right here.
Yep.
And if you pass it, congratulations. You're immune to this shit for the rest of your life.
Yeah, there's a lot of ops going on. But again, remember, it works because of our predilection to, supporting and protecting women. It works because of that. That's the first that that they're pushing your buttons when that's what they show you. So don't let them. I think that our audience is pretty simp proof, I think. So I'm not worried about that. But yes, beware. So anyway, I have 2 super chows, which I'm gonna read out. Mike Randenberg, did you want to add one other thing? Because I thought you were gonna say something else.
No, I can't remember. It was probably an amalgamation of what you all just said.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. So
I would suggest people watch The Running Man.
Yeah, The Running Man. Oh, that was a good movie.
Yeah, just watch it. You'll see what we're talking about. What it predicted is happening now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So I got a super chow from Richard Bier, who gives us $5. And he says, a military enlistment for the first time is technically for 8 years. 4 active duty, and 4 of individual ready reserve. Now retirement after 20 years is actually being on retainer for 10 years. After that, someone would have no further obligations unless it would be for something highly specialized. Replace Israel and Palestine with Hatfield and McCoy because those two families are still feuding to this day. It's just that nobody intervenes as long as the fighting remains contained within the families and doesn't involve anyone else.
That's great. I dated a Hatfield.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yes.
I just picture
but
guys
yeah.
with long beards, like the old cartoons of the you know. The
No.
Yeah.
But the weird thing was, if you watch the documentary, the History Channel documentary, and the last Hatfield that was hanged for murder, he looked just like that guy. I watched that documentary and it freaked me the fuck out.
Weird.
But yes, no, that's apt. That's quite apt.
Absolutely. All right, and then I got one from Meredith G. Thank you, Meredith. And she says, HBR News for $5. HBR News number 426. Don't trust the video footage. There has already been stuff debunked as fact because it comes from other events. It's not that there aren't horrors, but the footage is meant to push people to act when the best thing is to keep your powder dry because the cascade effect of acting too quickly. Initial polls find over 60% of people polled wanted to get involved in neither conflict. And the fog of war hasn't lifted. So think really hard about which politicians you vote for and make them know you don't want war. Absolutely, Meredith. Thank you.
Yeah.
So based. Meredith is top G. Okay, so if there's nothing else, we're going to move on to the next one. So thank you guys. And oh, this is a good one. Yeah, we will, I look forward to seeing your comments in the comments section. So, oh, get out of there. Okay. There's something wrong with my OBS where my like GIFs will start playing instead of when I push the button, like when I switch scenes. So sorry about that. All right. So ex-Dodgers pitcher Trevor Bauer has settled a legal feud after being accused of sexual assault by Lindsey Hill. Hill made allegations that Bauer choked and punched her during a forced sexual assault on May 2021. The allegations led to his placement on MLB's administrative leave list, which means he was fired, and a 194-game suspension for violating their domestic abuse guidelines. Bauer spent the past year playing for the Yokohama Dana Bay Stars in Japan and is still on the roster. So he had to go to Japan to play baseball. Bauer first sued Hill for defamation in April of 2022. Hill countersued Bauer, alleging sexual battery. They have now settled with neither side paying for the settlement apart from outstanding legal fees, and Hill will receive $300,000 on behalf of her insurance. Bauer is not paying Hill. Bauer's attorneys, John Federolf and Sean Hawley, announced, quote, both of their respective claims have been withdrawn with prejudice, effective today, end quote. With Lindsey Hill releasing her own statement on the settlement, quote, I'm finally free from his grip and will be able to move forward with my life is better than anything money could ever give me, truly, end quote. Bauer has responded to the settlement by revealing evidence of Hill's intentions to extort the athlete from the beginning. The evidence includes text messages and video of Lindsey Hill laying in bed the next morning with Bauer, smirking at the camera, clearly not battered or distressed. And I'm going to play the clip, so hold on a second while I'm going to change the screen I'm sharing with you guys. Let me see. Hold on a second. I'm going to change it so you guys can see or hear the actual sound. And I'm going to play this Twitter, or I think it's a Twitter video or a TikTok. I'm not really sure. Yeah, it's on Twitter. So, well, I'm going to play this for you guys, okay?
Next victim, star pitcher for the Dodgers.
It's like 4 minutes, but it's worth
Hill
it.
Sent to a friend before she ever even met me. What should I steal? She asked another, in reference to visiting my house for the first time. The answer? Take his money. So how might that work? I'm going to his house Wednesday, she said. I already have my hooks in. You know how I roll. Then, after the first time we met, net worth is 51 mil, she said. Bitch, you better secure the bag, was the response. But how is she going to do that? Need daddy to choke me out, she said. Being an absolute whore to try to get in on his 51 million, read another text. Then, after the second time we met, former Padres pitcher Jacob Nix told her, "You got to get this bag." "I'll give you $50,000, Lindsay replied. Her AA sponsor asked her at one point, "Do you feel a tiny bit guilty?" "Not really," she replied. Since then, her legal team has approached me multiple times about coming to a financial settlement. But as I have done since day one, I refuse to pay her even a single cent. In August of 2021, Lindsay Hill's claims were heard in court. And during those legal proceedings, critical information was deliberately and unlawfully concealed from me and my legal team. Information like this video, which was taken by Lindsay Hill herself the morning after she claimed she was brutally attacked, emotionally traumatized, and desperate to get away from me. And now we have the metadata, so there can be no dispute. It was taken mere minutes before she left my house on the morning of May 16th, 2021, without my knowledge or consent, of course. In it, you can see her lying in bed next to me while I'm sleeping, smirking at the camera without a care in the world, or any marks on her face. I think it paints a pretty clear picture of what actually happened the evening of May 15th and why the video was originally concealed from us. After hearing the evidence available to her, Judge Diana Gold-Saltman found that Lindsay Hill had misled the court. She found her claims to be materially misleading. She denied her request for a domestic violence restraining order, and she found that no sexual assault or non-consensual conduct took place. Now, some of you might not know about restraining order hearings. I know I didn't, but I've since learned that it's extremely rare for a request for a restraining order to be denied because the standard of proof that you need to obtain one is extremely low. So you can make of that what you will. The fact is, I was never arrested. I was never charged with a crime, and I won the only legal proceeding that took place without my side of the story even being heard. And most importantly, as I've said from day one, I never sexually assaulted Lindsay Hill, or anyone else for that matter. So I sued her, which prompted her to countersue me. Quite frankly, regardless of the outcome in court, I've paid significantly more in legal fees than Lindsay Hill could ever pay me in her entire life. And I knew that would be the case going in. But the lawsuit was never about the money for me. It was the only way for me to obtain critical information to clear my name. The discovery process in that lawsuit recently concluded, at which point Lindsay Hill's legal team again came to us with another proposal to resolve the case. This time, however, they weren't seeking any money from me. Having received much of the information that had been hidden from us, a small portion of which I've referenced here, I was willing to agree to the terms proposed. Both parties would drop their respective lawsuits, and neither of us would pay either side any money. I also retained my right to speak publicly about the case, something I have not been at liberty to do since June of 2021. So, as of today, both lawsuits have been settled. Now, over the last 2 years, I've been forced to defend my integrity and my reputation in a very public setting. But hopefully this is the last time I have to do so, as I'd prefer to just remain focused on doing my job, winning baseball games and entertaining fans around the world. So today, I'm happy to be moving on with my life.
All right.
So metadata is going to become key in terms of video evidence from now on, pretty much. As long as the two factors of deepfakes and AI art, and people are getting pretty good with creating, using AI to create deepfakes. With him being able to cite the metadata that shows where and how that video was created, that's going to be one key factor. And of course, the other is if it's found on her phone, which I think it was pretty obvious it was. And she had to admit that. That makes it definite evidence and not just, video. And that's something that we can't trust when we just see something in the media. We can trust it when we see it used as evidence in court where it's been confirmed. And that's something that you're going to have to watch out for indefinitely now. And women will post videos. This happened. Well, what's the metadata say? Have you been able to admit this in court? Have you been able to prove that this is not fake? And that's going to have to happen from now on. And
yeah, so there's going to be a... Go on.
Oh, I was going to say that's the first point. The second point is you want to celebrate. I want to celebrate that all of this came out and she was publicly embarrassed and everything. But if her insurance paid her $300,000, she got what she wanted, and she's not going to care because she's a sociopath.
Mm-hmm. She did go on to do an interview after this, and was still basically pulling an Amber Heard, was still like a victim. After this video, which basically just like completely, BTFO'd her, and she's still like, crying
all the way to the
about
bank,
control and all that, and people are giving her a platform. So it's not really one and done. These women are like Final Fantasy bosses. Like they can just heal like every so often.
Yeah, there's going to be a feminist backlash to this kind of story, and it's going to be in the form of some kind of global activist movement designed to play Darvo. That's deny, attack, reverse victim, and offender. For anyone who's still out of the loop, and for anyone who didn't know, that's what #MeToo was all about. It was all one big Darvo. There's a semi-unspoken reality in our culture that women can use their sexuality to get what they want. If a man wants a job, he has to earn it by virtue of being good at that job. It's called meritocracy, for anyone who's out of like every loop. Whereas women, fuck it. You don't have to be good at what you do. You can just use your sexuality to exploit men's sexuality, and abracadabra, you have wished upon a star and all your dreams come true. The Me Too movement was a way for women to take their blatant exploitation of men and reinterpret it as men's exploitation of women, thereby extracting even more exploited resources from men. And it worked like a charm, like it always does. They steal men's children and then claim this is actually discrimination against women because women are the ones expected to be mothers. Feminists used violent terrorism with bombs and everything in order to give women the vote for nothing, while men only had the vote in exchange for their lives. And then those feminists continued to claim they're being oppressed by the second-hand citizens they created. Every time feminists bite off yet another pound of flesh from men, they turn around and act like they're the ones missing vast chunks of human flesh as a result of the very inactions they enacted. And they'll do it again. This Trevor Bauer, this bastard, I mean, sure, he lost his job and his income and his reputation and several years of his life, but that didn't happen. What did happen was that he tried to smear this poor woman using incrimination. Da, 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 da. It sounds like discrimination, I know, but discrimination, that word has already been assimilated. Discrimination is something that only negatively affects women, just like harassment or domestic violence or even sexism itself. These things only happen to women. If they happen to men, they didn't happen, and or we call it some kind of euphemism. And next up for the assimilation machine, incriminating evidence. Like when you catch a woman red-handed trying to extort a man for everything he's worth. Incriminating evidence. Evil misogynist men all over the world are taking the concept of incriminating evidence and weaponizing it against women, poor innocent women. Something needs to be done to rid the world of this scourge of incrimination. Unless, of course, women are using it against men, then we'll call it something else. We call it equalitizing evidence, perhaps. Or fuck it, just equity. Why invent a new term when you could just assimilate everything you want into the great Akira blob of your favorite term? When it benefits women exclusively and explicitly, it's equity, or whatever the latest buzzword is. Yeah. When it benefits men, even inclusively, it's sexism, misogyny, harassment, hate speech, discrimination, incrimination, assimilation. Let's grab that one while our enemies are still using it. Yeah, it's whatever the latest buzzword is. This is advanced newspeak, folks. You don't just reduce everything to one sort of static word. You reduce everything to one word, and you perpetually cycle through slight variations of that word to be decided in advance by Big Brother and whatever Big Brother is trying to stamp out at the time. Your name is not even Winston. Winston, your name is ... 404. Fucking never forget it. Yeah, I think we're way past the point where there should be a sort of Godwin's law about mentioning Orwell.
Whoa. What? Any other... sorry, go ahead. Orwell gets more relevant every day. We should be reciting 1984 in its entirety from bullhorns all over the world every day. In much the same way Muslims use their call to prayer, where they go from bullhorns every day. And we should do that with fucking Orwell. Who controls the past controls the future forever and ever. Amen. And we'd all sing along in unison. The irony would be palpable, but at least we would get the joke. Hopefully. Probably not. But it's worth a try. I'm not a real doctor. None of this is medical.
I just had a shower thought. Like, she should have said he threw baseballs at her. Not that it would have been terribly believable, but it would have been like 1% more believable than what she was saying. Because, like, I mean, pitcher, that kind of tracks.
Yeah, I mean, he was pitching something at her with that smile on her face. So, just saying,
you can do a lot of damage with a 90-mile-per-hour fastball, man.
You can kill somebody depending on where you hit them.
Yeah,
with a good throw.
Are we talking about actual baseballs? Okay, never mind.
Yes, that has happened. Actually, there's been deaths from somebody getting hit in the chest with a fast pitch. Even at the little league level. There's been at least one death from somebody getting hit in the chest with it was just sudden. But this chick, I know there's gonna be women out there going, oh, this is bad for me too. This is bad. Well, every liar that comes out exposes Me Too for what it was. Yes, but if you guys out there that are upset that a liar gets caught because it might be bad for Me Too, that if that's your main take from this, you're making a huge mistake. If you latch on to women like this will represent you, and you really don't want that. I just for the few people that listen to us, the more that you excuse this shit, and the more that you engage in apologia about opposing due process because liars being exposed is bad for Me Too, the more liars will represent you, and the less believable your movement will be. I mean, if that's what you want, then go right ahead, destroy yourselves. But that's just my 2 cents.
All right. So I guess we'll move on to the next one. Let us know what you guys think about this one in the comments. I got a super chow from Albatross for $10. Thank you, Albatross. And he says, I tried commenting on other videos that women are either rewarded or just not punished for behavior like this, but YouTube wouldn't let me post that. Well, I guess YouTube knows what's best. So
surprise.
Yeah, I know. Well, thank you for the super chow, Albatross. And again, send us a super chow and I'll give you a Badger Chan. Send us a Rumble rant, I'll give you a Rumble Chan. We get most of the money from the super chows. I think most of it on the Rumble rants as well. So I look forward to seeing your comments. And we're going to now move on to the final story. Oh, no, I'm sorry. We have two more. We move on to the next story. We're going to talk about Ryan Carson. So, Mike J, I'm going to give it to you.
Well, thank you, Brian. I didn't get you anything. Damn. So, a tragic scene played out in the early hours of Monday, October the 2nd in Brooklyn, New York. Ryan Carson and Claudia Morales, a political activist couple, were waiting at a bus stop at 4 a.m. after attending a friend's wedding. As the couple waited, presumably for public transit, a lone black male can be seen walking past them. Shortly afterwards, the couple stands up and begins walking in the same direction as the black male. Seconds after they do, the black male, for seemingly no reason, begins to kick and attack a nearby rack of scooters. Undeterred by the random act of violence, Carson and Morales continue walking towards the black male. Carson steps in front of his girlfriend and exchanges words with the black male. It's unclear from the footage exactly what was being said by Carson. The black male then focuses his anger onto Carson, yelling at him and uttering, "What the fuck are you looking at?" and "I'll kill you," before advancing towards Carson. Carson can be heard telling the man to chill multiple times, and also using his hand to shove the man back, which further aggravates him. The black male then pulls a knife out of his pocket and begins to advance on Carson. Carson pushed back yet again, and then attempted to run away, but ends up tripping over the bus stop he was sitting on moments ago. The black male then rushes him, stabbing him several times in the chest with at least one blow, piercing his heart, all while Morales watches from the sidelines. The black male almost leaves for a moment, but then returns to spit on Morales and to kick Carson, who is now laying motionless on the ground. The black male then throws something at Morales and leaves the scene. A Good Samaritan approaches Carson and Morales, a black woman, with Morales asking her to go watch him, pointing in the direction of the black male attacker. The video cuts as Morales kneels down at Carson's side and says, "I'm going to call 911. Ryan Carson would later die of his wounds in transit to the King's Country Hospital Center. Days later, Brian Dowling, age 18, would be named as the suspect in the slaying of Ryan Carson. Dowling, despite his young age, has a history of violent outbursts, mental illness, and a number of court summons for disorderly conduct, although it's unclear if he has ever been arrested before, but we would not know that because of the status of juvenile records being sealed.
Anybody want to say anything about this? You guys know about this story?
This is horrible.
It is horrible. Yeah.
And there are a lot of people that are doing some very unsavory, uncouth suggestions that this individual had it coming because he was someone who was very politically active. He was a very left-leaning individual, quite the social justice activist, and it's really sickening.
Is this the one I've seen on Twitter where people are saying they're ridiculing somebody for having said that he would have had compassion for his killer?
Those are what his circle of friends are saying,
right.
and I have
people
to
are
say
ridiculing that.
They all
I
seem
would,
like douchebags.
Well, I would point one thing out in regard to this. Like obviously that means that this idiot who attacked him, who clearly did so without any cause or provocation, just killed the only guy that would have stood up for him in court. It's too bad for him, isn't it? But this is a tragedy all around, and like not knowing the individuals involved very well at all, I will say this: that kind of violence in a human being, and in particular that kind of unprovoked violence in a human being, is a sign that the individual's maturity was interrupted. Their process of maturity was interrupted. human maturation is the process involves learning to negotiate before jumping to violence, and learning self-control, learning the benefits of staying within the social agreements that we have in our communities, regardless of law and order. Just the fact that you want to live at peace with your neighbors and not have things like this kid, if he has a juvenile record, it's probably because of incidents similar to this, where he completely lacked self-control. And this would be a product of things like being raised without a father, being raised in an environment where everything he did was excused as something that he couldn't help doing, as opposed to somebody coming along during his life, a teacher, a neighbor, another family member, something, saying, hey, you need to get this behavior under control so that you can have a better life and so that you won't hurt the people around you. And nobody did that for that kid, obviously, because he's in this situation now and a man is dead, which is never a good outcome, regardless of his politics. Like I went on a rant about Joe Biden earlier. I wouldn't want this to happen to him either. Right? I'm not celebrating the fact that he's becoming increasingly senile in public either. That's awful. But yeah, this is what we get in our society when we turn around and excuse women making stupid choices, and we pay women to make stupid choices, like raising their children without a dad, or raising their children in neighborhoods that are overrun by gangs, letting their kids run wild, and so on. And the other thing that may contribute to this is, if this kid's been in the juvenile detention center in his area, there is an unfortunate non-zero chance that he was sexually exploited by the female staff there. In fact, 95% of inmate reported staff perpetrated sexual misconduct was perpetrated by women, despite the fact that it was less than half of staff that were women. So there are many contributing factors that may have gone into this. And that's not to excuse the kid's actions. You can explain actions without excusing them. But I don't have a lot of hope that he's going to be reformed, that his outcome is ever going to get better, that there won't be another victim sometime down the line, because our society does not deal with this. Our society sweeps it under the rug. Our society treats it like it's an inevitable outcome. Our society tortures people with mass incarceration that does not necessarily help the situation, and solitary confinement and punishment with very little explanation and very little education involved in it, and does not ever actually deal with the psychology and the development failures behind these types of crimes. So all around, like, this is just a horrible situation to discuss until these things change. Like, we don't even know if the kid had a mental health condition that needed addressed and never was, right? So until those things are addressed, we're going to continue to see stories like this. Lots of stories like this exist about people that nobody knows, that aren't well known enough for it to make the news every day. And it's just disheartening.
And I have to say, with regard to the write-up we just heard, that has to be the most times I've ever heard the term black male in a news article. I counted 11. I mean, there's only so many times.
That was me. That was 100% me. That's not a news article.
Yeah, I know. There's only so many times you can say it before you might as well be saying, no, I am not being serious. The point is, well, at least the still somewhat sarcastic point is, you know what you're supposed to say, don't you? Instead of black male. You're supposed to say man.
Yeah,
strap
Yeah.
hanger.
Just
Yeah.
male.
Yeah,
Just
it-
male.
Lunchtime
It was-
rowdy.
It
Cold-hearted
was
teens.
it was a man who stabbed this poor activist in the chest. If you had said man 11 times, literally nobody would have even noticed, because that's the traditional way of doing things. If it's a man doing a bad thing, he's a man. If it's a woman doing a bad thing, it's a bad thing doer. or an insert job title here who happened to do a bad thing. All of which leads me onto a question of hypocrisy that keeps coming up. If black people are disproportionately committing violent crimes and we attribute that to victim mentality, then how come men are disproportionately committing violent crimes when men are suffering, if anything, the exact opposite of victim mentality? And vice versa. If it's men's fault, how is it not black people's fault? If it's black people's fault, how is it not men's fault? It's a point of argument that can be approached from either direction and called hypocrisy. And I regret bringing this up because we could spend the next 12 hours talking about it. So I'll do my best to summarize it. When any group or demographic is attacked in any way by any weapon of degradation, their natural response is to send the men to the front line in order to fight fire with fire. If you attack a tribe with flamethrowers, they will send their men to the front line with flamethrowers. If you degrade a tribe using victim mentality, even if it is explicitly gynocentric victim mentality, nay, especially if it is gynocentric victim mentality, then they will send their men to the front line with weapons of victim mentality. Those men will exact the righteous indignation of that victim mentality as they defend their women to the death, and they will not even conceptualize their own male deaths as victimization. When it comes to victimhood, all roads lead to women. In every culture, in every religion, in every race, and so on and so forth. You will never see an ideology that leaves women ostracized on the street, left with nothing but a flip knife and 7 loose screws, while the men of equivalent social class are shacked up in a council house with 17 state-subsidized children. It cannot happen in this species. We are not wired to let it happen. We are wired to respond to any and every given crisis by pushing men into the dangerous extremes and pulling women back into the safety of the consensus. And that is why it is men who commit the most crimes, with or without victim mentality. The only thing victim mentality does is make men even more determined to prevent the victimization of women. Case in point, a man got stabbed by another man. A woman was present. She probably screamed, she probably cried. She was never in danger. Because at the end of the day, overall and in aggregate, we live in a world where men kill men. All it can do is get worse or better on that front. And I don't mean better at killing men, I mean better at not killing men. Or worse at killing men. Needless to say, don't kill anyone for any reason ever. Or any kind. I'm not a real doctor, none of this is medical advice.
Yeah. So
You know, there's something else that really needs pointed out about this. If the sexes were reversed and the kid had attacked her, if she had approached him and said, "Hey, are you okay?" You know, and he had turned around and attacked her, and she had been killed while he stood by, there would be mass condemnation of this man for not defending her. Now, granted, she doesn't look like the type of woman that is raised and trained to defend her guy. She doesn't look big and strong. She doesn't look very capable of it.
She's a feminist.
But it is, she may not be used to that, and it may not even have occurred to her. So I'm not saying that she needs to be subject to mass condemnation because she may have been worse than worthless in a fight. She may have been a liability in a fight, but still, in that situation, if the sexes had been reversed, it wouldn't matter whether the guy would have been a liability in a fight or not. Or in fact, that would have added to his condemnation. That is a huge double standard between men and women. He's expected to be able to handle situations like this just because of his gender. And she's not even expected to be able to back him up.
Yeah.
Two things real quick here.
Yeah, go ahead.
A little bit of context. I said his friends are douchebags, referring to Ryan Carson's friends, the man that was murdered. They have a GoFundMe set up.
Yeah, I was gonna mention
and it
that.
says, do you want to take that?
No, I don't have it. Just tell us what it says, or send me the link.
And
I'll
it says,
share it.
and I can't believe the fucking wording of this.
Okay, let's hear
We
it.
are a collective of Ryan's close friends reeling from a brutal loss. We are asking for your help on behalf of his partner in easing the burden and stress on this horrifying situation so that we can have space and time to grieve and remember Ryan. Immediate needs are to offset the costs of working class people taking off time from work to properly mourn.
Yeah,
So it's not going to Ryan's family.
It's commie shit.
It's not going to Ryan's now former girlfriend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's going to his fucking communist buddies.
Yep.
So they can have a whinge and get paid for it.
Yeah, it's commie shit. So, what I was gonna say about this is, everything that Hannah said about this guy that stabbed him is probably right. It's obviously a fatherless issue. We've talked about this many times. As an aside, if you're subscribed to Warren Farrell's channel, you should be. He did an interview with Larry Elder, who was like the one guy I hoped that was like, he's like running for president. I was the one guy that I had hoped above anyone else that Warren Farrell would actually talk to, because Larry Elder has talked about fatherlessness specifically in the black population for decades, and they finally talk to each other. So that's a really good video, totally worth watching. Agree with it 100%. I grew up in Humboldt Park. I know the landscape. But the thing about this that I want to add is about Ryan himself. I don't believe he deserved this, obviously. But he did contribute to the conditions that put him in this situation. And that is to say, I think that this whole ACAB, defund the police, their white supremacists, etc. attitude essentially created the conditions for him to get killed, because he had this illusion in his mind that if he just gave enough empathy, then nothing would happen. It's a feminine way of approaching things. He was approaching this in a feminine fashion, and when you work with feminists in a feminine-oriented environment where you're trying to push feminine-oriented policy because you're looking out for the little guy, or supposedly, those poor old minorities, they're just innocent little Aladdins that want to feed their families, like all of that, then it's the men that end up paying the price. So when this guy came, and yes, even the murderer was gynocentric. Even the murderer killed the man and just spat on the woman, because I guess he felt like, well, I should give her something. I'll just spit on her and leave. Right? This feminine way of thinking, when you're working in this environment, it can get you killed. That's the thing that I'm taking away from this. This is the thing that we should learn from this, okay? You can't, look, New York City has a lot of problems. They obviously have crime problems. This guy might get off because the DA is pretty corrupt. It's not much different from the DA in Chicago, Kimberly Fox, that's just letting people go, or the DAs in California and Seattle that basically take murderers in and they release them in a week or less because it costs too much to keep them. So I mean, it's probably not going to amount to anything, and it's him and his commie buddies that advocated for the policies that allow these people to run around the streets, addicted to drugs, with all kinds of mental health problems, maybe homeless, violent, angry, etc. Yes, those people need help. But guys like Ryan are not helping them. They're enabling them, and on top of that, they're making people's lives more, putting them at risk Usually these people are free from that. Usually. But in this case, you know, and there's actually a couple of cases. There was other incidents, I didn't choose them as stories, where you had these far left commie activists that were all about defund the police and don't put anybody in jail and they're innocent Aladdins and all of that, and they were killed by criminals, or they were in the wrong place at the wrong time, or something like that. And then look, I get it. Criminality is not necessarily inherent. I get that. We've talked about what you can do to prevent it. But this attitude is feminine. And the women in these movements almost never have to deal with the consequences of what they advocate. Almost never. But the men do. And so I think that's worth pointing out. And I'm sorry for your loss. I'm sorry for the passing of Ryan. I don't have any sympathy for his commie friends trying to make a buck off of it. I think that's pathetic, but I mean, that's commies. That's what they do. That's what I hope you're paying attention. That's the pattern. That's what they do. So, I think I'm just saying, like, New York's going to either have to legalize guns for everybody if they're going to keep the police gone, or they're going to have to bring the cops back, because you can't have it this way. People can't defend themselves, and there's like criminals on the streets, and I'm talking about violent felons on the streets. So it's not going to work, and now they got a whole bunch of like illegal immigrants in New York City too, and they're just taking up space. And who knows? You can't track them. They don't have papers. They're just there. I mean, what do you think's going to happen? I'm sorry, but human nature is not peaceful. We have to be civilized before we become a civilization. Anyway, those are my thoughts. But
one last thing I've got.
Yeah.
So, and this is sort of tangential, just something to kind of ride on the coattails of this. There is a lesson here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a really important one. 2 words. Situational awareness.
Yeah. Well, see, he saw, because look, I saw the video. My antennas went up when I saw that, and I was like, this guy is he's like, well, if I cross the street, he might think I'm racist. So I think I'd rather just die than be seen as racist. That's what he did. That was the choice. Oh, it's either I die or I avoid him, live, but then my girlfriend thinks I'm racist. So I'm going to go ahead and die. I'm going to throw empathy at this dude who's coming at with a knife, being really irrational, and just hope that he doesn't think, as long as I'm not a racist, it's okay that I'm dead. As long as I'm not racist, That's literally what it is, guys. That's all it is. These people, like, the oikophobia is real, okay? I never doubted it wasn't. I never doubted that it was. This guy was so ashamed of his own existence that he was willing to let a criminal kill him so he wouldn't look like a bad person. Because if he would have kicked his ass, not that he could have, but let's say he could have. Let's say he was fucking, the Iron Fist guy from the train. If he had look at how they treated that guy for standing up. And he wasn't even standing up for himself. He was standing up for other people on the train. Danny something, if this guy would have been it probably would have been treated like that. It was New York and everything. I'm sorry, Mike J. You were talking. I talked over you.
But again, situational awareness. I just, from watching the video, and it's something I don't recommend you do unless you've really got some tough mental faculties, because it's hard to watch, man. It really is hard to watch. But at least the very lead up to it, so many opportunities for this to have never happened. Like, number one, don't start walking the same direction as a dude with a pulled up black hoodie at 4 a.m. Number two, when you see him start assaulting an inanimate object for no reason, don't keep walking in that direction. Turn around. Number three, if you should happen to need to keep walking in that direction, don't talk to the guy. Don't try to figure out what his deal is. Don't try to rationalize with the man who's attacking a scooter. These are just all things that are just, no, don't. I don't care if you're the biggest social justice warrior on the planet. have some fucking common sense.
Yep. You don't
And
have
if
to
you
prove
do get
anything.
into a vocal confrontation with the guy, just be like, hey, you're right. You're right, I'm wrong, I'm leaving. You're right,
Yep.
I'm wrong, I'm leaving.
Yep. You just wanted to hug it out.
Don't get in his face. Don't start shoving him. Don't start being
No.
like, I'm gonna go mediate this because I am mediator man.
Yeah.
No. And if all else fails, fucking run.
Yeah. I mean, they're not letting you protect yourself in that city. They're you know, people who, if you act like a hero in New York, ironically, the birthplace of heroes, you're probably gonna get penalized. You might even get arrested. I mean, that guy on the train, he got arrested because he stepped up. So what are you gonna do? I mean, get out of there or change the politics. That's all I can say.
Fucking run and don't stop till you see a sign that says "Now entering Vermont."
Yeah. Wait, Vermont.
Yeah, the
I don't
main
know if,
thing
I don't
is-
know
Isn't
if
that
New York
Bernie's-
connects to
isn't that
Vermont or not.
Bernie Sanders' state, or at least I don't know. But go ahead, Hannah.
Yeah, the main thing is if you're just a civilian in a civilian circumstance, you're not a trained professional in terms of dealing with this stuff. You have no idea what you're dealing with when you're dealing with a stranger.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've dealt with something like that. What Mike is talking about. Years ago, I worked at the gas station down the street from where I live. And my neighborhood's not the type of high crime neighborhood where there's a lot of break-ins of people's homes and muggings and stuff like that. It's usually like I was in more danger most of the time at work. We were more likely to be robbed at work than on the street or in our homes. But I was walking to work at like 4:30 in the morning, which was normal for me, and there was a woman coming the other direction having an argument, and there was nobody around her, and it was before it was common for people who weren't pretty well heeled to have like devices that you couldn't see if they were talking on the phone. So this was a woman who was talking to nobody, and she was very heated, and you can bet I crossed the street. And I didn't care how I looked in that moment. I cared whether or not I got attacked in that moment. And you don't know what somebody's going to do. And you don't know what somebody's capable. When somebody is in the throes of a mental health crisis, for instance, they don't pay attention necessarily to pain from overexerting their muscles. And I have even seen elderly people throw hospital beds. I worked in 2 different nursing home environments. And when I say throw, I mean like flip it like flipping a table. And this is not a lightweight piece of equipment. It has machinery to move it, to set it up and everything. And this is before the more modern lightweight ones. So you just avoid in that situation. And, I didn't get hurt. I walked across the street. I went down well beyond where she was. And I paid attention to make sure she didn't notice me. And then I went on to work and called the police and said, hey, there's a lady that seems to be in a mental health crisis heading this direction on this street, and let it go after that. Because it's not your job to do anything more than that. And you may actually create more of a situation by doing that, by actually getting involved, than existed prior to your involvement if you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, when you grow up in the hood, or in some equivalent, you develop, I guess, an instinct. I grew up around gangs my whole life, so I know when, like, and not just gangs, but junkies, winos, just, all kinds of just people in pain and with anger. And when I saw the start of that video, I knew something was wrong. I've seen guys like that, like walking around like that in the middle of the night. You just, no, take an Uber, get an Uber. Just saying. But
yeah, people don't act like that if there's not
No.
something wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
And it may
but
be well more than you are ready to address.
it could simply be naivete. But I think if that guy is a Chicago native, I mean not Chicago, New York native, he should have probably had his hackles up. But then was like, oh, but that's probably that's probably a racist response. I can't do that. Let me go ahead and die first. All right, but anyway, let us know what you guys think about this in the comments, and feel free to send us a super chow. That's why Badger Chan has her hands out. She wants a super chow, so please, you know, give her some super chow. All right, we're gonna move on to the final story. Might even get through all of these. Go away. All right. So Jade Berry, pictured here. A 27-year-old female dental receptionist sexually assaulted a boy in public after allegedly going on a white wine binge. Berry was staggering through Recavra Valley Country Park in Ellesmere Port, Cheshire. Oh, that's a lot. At 9 p.m. when she accosted the child as he sat on a Woodland Park bench talking with a friend about his forthcoming 14th birthday. So he was 14 years old. Barry sat, or he was 13 years old. He was going to be 14. Barry sat between the two boys and began stroking the 13-year-old's genitals over his clothing before offering him sex and saying she would ride him till morning. Shocked, the boy tried to walk away, but Barry pulled down her trousers and exposed herself. The boys took a video of her as they were leaving. Barry was identified because she left her bank card and her phone. Oops. After being interviewed by police, she said that, "Oh my God, I do not recall anything." She was picked out of a lineup by, who is that? By, picked out of a lineup by the boy. Barry pleaded to sexual assault and sentenced to 12 months in jail, suspended for 18 months. He was also ordered to wear an electronic sobriety tag for 120 days and complete 35 rehab activity days. She also had to sign the sex offenders register for 10 years. Her counsel, John Wynne Williams, said that, quote, she was sadly suffered from mental health problems since the age of 15 or 16, and COVID was a particularly difficult time for her. She has a self-destructive nature, and because of this nature, she has turned to alcohol to deal with his issues, but she now realizes that it is not the answer to her problems. The separation of her parents is another factor that has caused her mental anguish. Her memory of this unfortunate incident is fairly scant, but she did not want that young boy to have to give evidence in a trial. Her psychiatrist identifies anxiety disorder, panic attacks, and borderline personality disorder as mental health issues, and because of those problems, she has been drinking too much. It seems that her alcohol intoxication may have led her into doing and committing this offense. There is genuine heartfelt remorse, and she shows the victim empathy.
If I may, just real quickly here. It's you is the problem! You is the problem! It's not COVID, it's not your parents, it's not your alcohol, it's not your fucking borderline personality, it is you, woman!
Yeah, couldn't have said it better. I mean,
thank you.
I don't know what to add after that. I'm going to throw my fucking cards down. Yeah, well, while we're talking about this rather horrific case of child rape, I presume you're like glancing at the Daily Mail article about it. What's the first word in the headline? It's drunk.
Yeah, drunk dental receptionist. Yeah.
Pardon me going off on what might seem like an irrelevant tangent, but that's rather the point at which I'm getting. Certain tangents are irrelevant. The Daily Mail does this a lot. If they can shoehorn in some puritanical side quest into an article, they will. And it usually involves recreational chemicals. If they find a child rapist who allegedly smoked weed, the headline will be, weed smoking, insert job title here, man, and maybe a woman as well, caught producing 1,000 hours of CP. Like, I don't know why you do this, Daily Mail. I assume it comes down to the editor going, oh man, this was such a piece of shit. We need to find some dirt on this chick to throw everything we got against the wall. Yeah, but boss, She's a child rapist? That's... surely we've hit peaks here. You want us to dig up her garden looking for dirt and start searching her closet looking for skeletons when she already has a giant pile of CP toxic waste and the bones of children amassed in full view on her driveway? And the editor just goes, fuck you, journalist. This is a headline millions of people are going to read, and I'm not wasting the opportunity to propagandize against all the other things I don't like. What, this bitch drinks Earl Grey? Hot? Well, I prefer oolong. Tepid. So fuck this bitch. Your headline is Earl Grey drinking uber cunt diddles kids. Men are probably to blame somewhere, somehow, wherever. You know what, Daily Mail? I liked you better when you were going on about the dangers of mass immigration all day, every day. And we mocked you. We mocked you for it. And for that, I apologize. You were right in every way about the dangers of mass immigration. But for God's sake, get your head or ass about recreational chemicals as and when they have exactly fuck all to do with the stories you're covering. And the misandric cunts front and center of those stories who are doing the absolute lion's work of the child grooming on a diet of pumpkin spiced latte and smashed avocado for what it's worth, which is also nothing. Everything I say is worth nothing. Shut up. I'm not a real doctor. None of this is medical advice.
I will point out that all of these things that were mentioned as potential extenuating factors in her case are things that, if they were mentioned in a man's case, would contribute to his sentencing, not take away from it. Oh, that this guy has mental health conditions. In addition to his incarceration, he will be ordered to go to mental health treatment at a state-funded facility where the mental health treatment will consist of nothing helpful whatsoever. If he had borderline personality disorder, which is in a guy they would just call him antisocial. They would just turn around and say, well, he's not going to just be on the sex offender registry for 10 years. He's going to be on it for the rest of his life because obviously he has this disorder. And if it contributed to his behavior, then given that it's not going to go away, we have to watch him for the rest of his life. Same thing with the alcoholism. They would just turn around and say, well, obviously this man is using alcoholism as an excuse for this behavior. And therefore, he's not taking responsibility for what he did. So we're going to keep him in jail longer. But in her case, she's able to throw all this shit at the wall and hope that it sticks. And it does, right? 12 months in jail for sexually assaulting an underage kid on a park bench in a public place. Can you imagine a grown man getting only 12 months in jail for sexually assaulting a 13-year-old girl on a park bench in a public place? And then
I can't imagine him getting any time. He wouldn't make it to trial.
No.
He wouldn't make it out of that park.
So somebody's dad would track him down. All right, but if he survived and he went to court, it would be years, not a year. It would be years, and then he would get out and be on a registry for the rest of his life if he survived his sentence. If somebody in the prison system did not kill him when they found out what he did. Yeah, like this blows my mind. And on one hand, she's turning around and saying there's genuine heartfelt remorse, and she shows the victim empathy, and she pled guilty without going to trial. And most women will make all of these excuses and hope it gets them out of it in court. Whereas this one actually stood up and said, I should never have done this. I was wrong. And I'm going to get help. There's at least that. Like, that's better than most women would do. But for fuck's sake, if these conditions can be seen as causes in need of treatment, in need of compassion, where the perpetrator says, if I fix as much of this as I can, I will not commit this type of crime again. That should play for both sexes. A man should be able to go into court and say, yes, I did this. Yes, I'm guilty. I fucked up. And these contributing factors made it hard for me to not fuck up. I'm going to get help, and I will not do this again. And be treated the same way that she is treated here. But that's not the case. Feminists fought for women to be treated this way. And if, like I said, if this is a good thing, then it would be a good thing for both sexes. I say there's sort of somewhere in between where she needed to be held more accountable and a man needs to be offered more help and the opportunity to pick his own doctor instead of going through the state, because the state is not necessarily going to behave in a manner that's compassionate to a situation and commensurate with a situation. But that's just my take on it. I'm not a doctor either, so there you go.
So I'm just throwing one thing in there. If this 13-year-old boy goes on and commits like an assault of his own on some kind, like he, you know, I don't know, let's say that he this experience has an effect on him and he goes on and abuses someone else, they won't make this connection. It won't even come up. He becomes a complete agent that exists in a vacuum. These experiences, you know, the experiences of serial rapists are that they themselves were raped or assaulted in some way. And we can make that like connection or it will be brought up when the offender is a woman. But if the offender is a man, nobody cares that might be a contributing factor. And so what do we end up doing? We enable or defend female abusers who in turn, maybe a small percentage of the boys that they molest go on to become molesters themselves. And so because of that, we create more abusers overall, and we protect the women, and we don't want to like even entertain the possibility that boys should be protected from women in the same way that girls should be protected from women. And well, basically children should be protected from women in the same way that we want to protect children from some men. And so it's like a cycle that fulfills itself, really, because we don't take it seriously when women do it.
Yeah, there is research that shows this, and different research has come up with different numbers, but all of the various research does show that there's a disproportionately high representation among perpetrators, adult male perpetrators of sexual misconduct. There's a very disproportionate representation of guys who were victimized as children, both by men, some by women, and this is something that gets ignored. It's not a guarantee, like it's a myth that it's like vampires where if you get sexually assaulted, you're going to grow up and sexually assault someone.
No.
But it is something that needs to be looked into, and there's evidence that if the victim doesn't get the help they need, if they are living in an environment where they don't have good examples of functional relationships, healthy relationships, and things like that, and where they learn to grow up and be violent, then they do go on to perpetrate. And the majority of perpetrators end up being violent in other ways as well. So it is something that needs to be recognized, understood, and responded to, where victims need to get the right kind of therapy, and their environment needs to be taken into consideration as well.
Myself on accident. Yes, absolutely. So, yeah, I look forward to seeing your comments. I did get a super chat. Thank you. Alex's Lawn Care gives us $5 and says, if the sex of the perpetrator is not mentioned in the headlines, it is most likely a woman. Also see Alyssa McCommon, 38. Yes, that is the case. I will give you a like to that super chat. It's a super chat, not a super chow. All right, but anyway, so that covers all the stories. We're gonna head into the patron show now. We're gonna be talking about this Mia Khalifa thing. If you guys want to join us in the patron show, please go to feedthebadger.com and set up a monthly subscription. $5 a month will get you into our Discord, and you'll be able to watch the additional content and chat with us just like you are doing right now. Or you can give it higher levels and maybe even join us in the actual Discord voice chat and discuss the article with us. So with all that said, if you guys like this video, please hit like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, hit the bell for notifications, leave us a comment, let us know what you guys think about what we discussed on the show today. I look forward to your comments on all of our news stories. I might not be doing shows until next week. My mother-in-law is coming into Virginia tomorrow, and we're going to be meeting with her, and so I'm not going to be doing shows for about a week. Allison has said she will take over. I don't know. She might need help. So I don't know if Hannah can help her, or I can try to help her tomorrow if it's before my mother-in-law arrives. But be on the lookout for whatever content Allison has planned. I'll be back maybe next Tuesday. So thank you guys so much for coming on the show. Please, please, please share this video, and we will talk to you all in the next one.
Men's rights activists are machines, dude. Okay, they are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.